Hey, beautiful friends. I wanted to share a little response to a question I've been asked by a handful of people in the recent past and over the years, just as being human and a life and empowerment coach, and someone who has studied a lot of different ways of healing and exploring our inner worlds, not just our external worlds. And that is one of the key things people always ask is, how do you do what you do? How do you experience really intense things or challenging things and quote unquote make it look easy? I had a friend one time who kind of, because I wasn't outwardly looking more sad and depressed or angry, had assumed that I was just absolutely adoring life. Everything was great, easy peasy, all good, right? And then when we sat down and actually talked, the deeper reality of what I was processing internally came to the surface. And she was like, well, man, on the outside, you make it look easy. And so that's part of why I'm going to talk more about this, because I think that it can be misleading if we outwardly aren't projecting, lashing out, going around being sad and angry and hurtful. And it's not to say that we can't do that and that there's a place for that to some extent. What I am saying is that overall, it's a space of being able to process and deal with whatever is there, no matter what's there. And one of the key things that I do is I perceive all of life as sacred. I see value and lessons and learnings in every experience that I have, and I do not look at anything as though it is not useful. Now, I'm grateful that the indigenous teachings that I have learned and experienced and embodied for years have taught me that everything has a purpose and place. Creator did not create anything without great intention and purpose in the whole, for the whole, and in the whole, within the whole, for the whole, and or the all, as they say in the Hermetic principles. And so I say this because recently, with the 1111 portal that happened a bit ago, there was this energy coming through that was really encouraging me to let people know and to remind people that we are all sacred, that life is sacred, that being here is a sacred journey with great intention and great purpose. And that is another one of the key mental frames that I hold. I see everyone, everything, every set of circumstances as an opportunity to engage with a different aspect of source, creator, divine, whatever you choose to call it. And within that, I look at those experiences for what they show me, what they might trigger in me, what they give me an opportunity for. I do my best, and have years of practice and a lot of very extreme circumstances that I got to put this into action for. So I am speaking from my own personal use of these teachings. And that's another huge thing, is that I've studied a ton of things over the years, but if I didn't actually apply them to my day-to-day life, to the circumstances that were triggering, that were challenging, that some people might just say, well, this is absolute shit, I don't want anything to do with this. And it's not that I wanted those, challenging or less than positive experiences, but I wasn't going to let those type of experiences weigh me down, keep me from being my true, beautiful, shiny, divine self here in action. And that was another commitment that I had to make to myself in order to keep showing up the way that I am and have been and will continue to show up. And so it is so important for us to look at how we're perceiving each situation that we're in, what we're choosing to tell ourselves is or isn't true about that and about us, and how we can show up within that, and about what we need to do that, but also that when we step into life being sacred and purposeful and intentional, it allows us to see that we do have a great purpose for being here, as does everyone else. And while we all articulate things differently, and it doesn't necessarily, again, those things don't have to be right or wrong. It's just that we're each showing up in ways that we know how to, that we were conditioned to, that we are reconditioning, that we are building for ourselves. But we need to actually take conscious action in that and co-create with the universe in order to do that. And so it's just so important to see our sacredness, to be willing to honor and look at whatever is there, no matter what's there. And I think that's probably the biggest one that I see people get stuck on, is that if it's something like shame, betrayal, disappointment, lack, these emotions that we deem less than positive, those are the spaces where when people have experiences like that, or with regards or in relation to those things, it's more difficult, or can be more difficult typically, for people to be able to say, well, there's value in this, when it's hard for us to see value in things that feel hurtful: diseases, dysfunctions, shootings, wars, all of these energies that are very intense and heavy and not preferred, right? So it is that space that is the sweet spot. If you are able to see the purpose, if you're able to see that you are a sacred being that is capable of facing all of those things, by the way, I had to believe that I was capable of doing what I'm doing in order for me to be doing it right now. And so it isn't like some magic that people can't all tap into. This is available to each and every one of us, and it is up to each of us to implement them. And I don't know why I said it in such a weird way, but it's like, I'll double down on it. We have to implement the teachings in our day-to-day life, as I said earlier in this message, in order for them to actualize in our 3D reality. And it's like anything else, the more you practice, the more you're willing to look at it, the more you're willing to own your own role in everything that you experience, the more that you're willing to say, you know what, I don't know what I don't know, but I'm willing to learn and I'm open to new perspectives. All of those things, along with a dash of curiosity, are some of the components that I implement daily in order to live a life of greater expansion, more freedom, time and money freedom, and this space of being able to actually live a very strong and nourished life that's aligned with my heart's passions and goals and dreams for myself and the legacy I want to leave. And I really want to encourage all of you to find your own space within that. And if you need support, help, or guidance, that's something that I do help people with, because I know the depths and the challenges and what it actually takes to overcome some of the things that people fall into victimhood and fall into addictions, and escape, which is another form of addiction, but people can fall into so many different places after experiencing even low-level traumas, let alone super extreme traumas. And so it can even be just day-to-day things that people are challenged by. It doesn't actually even need to be a traumatic thing either. So, but all of those things require a certain amount of effort and awareness on our part, and there are many people that don't even want to look at the truth of what's there. And if we can at least do that first, then we're not going to be able to move forward. So it is a challenging space, and you guys have heard me say this, I write about it a lot, where I say it is definitely simple in practice, but not easy to necessarily do, because a lot of it also is counter our ego's conditioned way of doing things. And we have to learn how to drop into the heart space to expand, to get out of the ego, out of comparison, out of thinking it needs to look or be a certain way, or comparing ourselves to how other people are doing it. And so even within that, if a person compares themselves to anyone else's way of doing things, there could be suffering, and they may also not get the same results, because it's really about being able to apply these teachings to your own life in practical ways.